All right, how's everybody doing tonight? Okay? Well, I want to make mention first of Saturday we do have a hour of code workshop with the first one of the semester. It's going to be Saturday from 9 to 10. It's a little over half full. I think we've got 11 spots out of 20. And what it is, it's basically to demystify computer science and what coding's about. It's from ages 5 and up. It'll be in this room from 9 to 10. And if you just go to rbchourofcode.com or if you go to rockvalleycollege.edu, there's a link to RSVP. And so if you have any questions about it, see me after class. I'll show you real quickly as far as previews here, what it looks like. Anybody heard of Star Wars? Anybody heard of Star Wars? Okay. Well, we're going to be focused on the tutorial for Star Wars coming Saturday, and I'll show you here what you'll be doing. It's a lot of fun. Like the last time we did in August, we had like whole families do it all day. Vanita, you were there helping, so yeah, it was a lot of fun. We had a lot of fun doing it. So anyway, the agenda, I guess I'll go over that for the day or for the hour. It's fun hands-on learning about coding, unplugged and online. Unplugged means handouts, and you'll have some online references. For ages 5 and up, we'll have a raffle prize. I think I'm going to give out USB thumb drives this Saturday. And also there'll be information about CIS courses that teach code here on campus. The agenda at 9 a.m., there'll be a welcome introduction. Then at 9:05 to 9:55, there'll be the code tutorial that we're going to be doing on Star Wars. And then we'll wrap it up at the end with the raffle drawing door prize. And you will get a certificate of completion each time, so you can actually do one. It's going to be offered the fourth Saturday of every month between now and May. And let me go to the actual tutorial we'll be doing. It's called Star Wars, using a program called Blockly to drag and drop objects onto the screen to build Galaxy with code. So I'll show you how it works. There'll be a little video pops up. We won't watch that, but it's basically the creator of Star Wars talks about the designer they used to create this tutorial for people. One of the big characters in the movie was BB-8. BB-8 was the little ball character that rolled around in the desert, and they want BB-8 to get some scrap metal. So basically they've got in here a command that says when run, right now it moves right. They want to just add a second right to that, so basically it's just click, drag, and drop. And this app can actually be ran on a phone too, a Droid or iOS, but we'll use the Macs in here. Then I'll click run, and it says successful, and it shows the 2 lines of code that if we were to write code, that's what it would be, 2 lines of JavaScript to write. And then continue, I'll do one more. We need more scrap metal. Can you get all the metal in the area? So they've already learned how to move stuff, how to move right twice. So it's got to go here and then down here. Well, that's not enough. It's only one right. So if you want to, we could see a hint, and it would show us what we need to do. So I'm going to go ahead and add another right, and I'm going to add 2 downs. Let's see if that does it. Cool. Now what's awesome is at the very end, after the 8 or 10 little lessons you do, at the very end of it, you get to create your own using R2D2, your own game. You know all the little tricks now, how to do stuff. After you create your own and you're finished, you can send that to anyone that has a phone, or you can post it on Facebook and Twitter. On the phone send, basically, you just click this button to type in somebody's phone number. Like in December when we did it, I had people send it to all their family and friends, and it loads on their phone. They can play it, and it has a link at the bottom of the game to where they can also create their own level or their own version of that game as well. So that's what it's about. It's demystifying computer science to get people started in coding. In America, there's something like 2 million jobs going to be available by 2025, and we only have, if we're going at the rate of graduation now in college on computer science, around 500,000 people aim to be graduated by then. So we have a dearth in computer science folks, and one of the main reasons is only 1 out of 4 K through 12 schools offer anything in computer science in all of US of A. And so by the time students get to college, they are either freaked out by computer science courses, they think they're not smart enough, they think they can't do it, or they're just, just scared basically because they, don't think they have it. And so that's what this is all about. It's a nationwide movement. Code.org started by a gentleman a couple years back. President Barack Obama is involved with it. Mark Zuckerberg, Bill Gates, and folks like that are involved in actually writing some of these tutorials. So if you can come, that would be awesome. If you can't come this time, plan on coming one of the 4 we have left between now and May. And again, if you have any questions, let me know. But if you go to rockvalleycollege.edu, or if you can remember RVC Hour of Code, you can RSVP there. If you're going to bring kids or your friends or family, when you reserve, make sure and reserve for all that's coming. There'll be enough seats when everybody gets there. All right? Any questions on that? So this Saturday, 9 to 10, we'll be in and out in an hour. I also want to make mention on the assignment on the photo inspiration. Since MLK Day was yesterday, I thought I would extend the due date till tonight at 11:59 if you still have yet to do that. And so without being graded off any. The other thing I want to make mention is on the Periscope. A lot of people had conflicts on the Monday night. I didn't do one last night anyway because of Martin Luther King Day, but let's talk about for a second what would be a good day if there is one for this class to do it, or we can get a majority of people to be able to come to the Periscope event. It's just for 15 minutes once a week. So Monday night, it seemed like for a lot of people you have class. How many has Monday night class in here? From 6 on Monday night? Okay. What about Thursday night? Thursday, anybody have Thursday? Okay. And so it looks like everybody might be open for Thursday possibly. Maybe from like 6 to 6:15. Does that sound all right or no? Or do you want to keep the Monday? Keep the Monday? Now these are recorded, and so if you do miss one or if you can't make them, all of these are recorded and they will be posted on our Periscope or on our homepage. And so when you click on the Periscope Q&A sessions, that's where you'll find the recorded Periscope sessions. And so Monday we'll keep it then, I guess, for looks like everybody, majority of you can go to that. And again, if you can't, don't worry about it. They are recorded, and you can watch them post-session and make comments, or if you have a question, you can post them in the Periscope video. All right, cool. Well, this week we're going to be talking about camera history. I did post an announcement, which I try to do Sunday or Monday of each week that we're in. And let's open that up real quick. So this week we're going to go over camera history. Your take-home lab is going to be taking each other's photo. We're going to be using the auto mode focus tonight. And I'll try to write up on a board before each session what setting we're going to go over or what the topic is we're going over. I did put in there a link and information to RSVP for the hour of code that I just went over, including the RSVP link that you can avail yourself. So that's what we're going over this week. I believe I did tell you last week to bring your cameras each session, so that way you would have it for not only when we go over settings, but like tonight when you leave, you're going to be using it right after the session. So let's jump right into week 2, camera history. The podcast that's in there right now from last session, this was taught last time this was taught, will be replaced with tonight's. Last week, week 1 is in last week module. If you weren't here last week, it's in there in week 1 module. And I do have the notes already here, so I'm going to pull them up real quick here. go with all right. So again, this is going to go over introduction. As I told you last week, if you weren't here, basically that my first camera was a Brownie camera, and Brownie was one of the older, one of the first cameras out, were popular cameras for consumers to purchase anyway. Anybody heard of a Brownie camera, by the way? You heard of a Brownie camera? Okay. Let me show you a picture of one. Let's just pull one up here real quick. Yeah, I got it right there. Any of these will work. Let me find one that looks kind of like mine as far as the age goes. That one right there. That's roughly what mine looks. Mine's actually a little older than that one, but that's roughly what mine looks like. And it has the film pops open on the front case here. Actually, it's facing backwards. It's that back flap there, that metal flap, pops open. And has roughly 3 1/4 inch negatives that fit in there. And you could get anywhere from 10 negatives to 20 negatives. And when I was about 10 years old, I saved up enough money mowing lawns and doing stuff like that to where I basically built my own dark room in a closet right next to my room, and did that for a number of years growing up. And so my mom kind of gave me the passion for photography. Went from this to a 35 millimeter after this one. And then from 35 millimeter to what everybody pretty much has tonight, what we're going over this semester, digital. But going through college, I was going to college originally for graphic design and pastoral ministries when I first started college. Before I started teaching, though, and decided to change my major, we used to have to go over such things as photo layout and design and graphics design back in the day, where we would take a photo that was printed out on a 35 millimeter camera, or back even before that in the Brownie possibly years ago, and you would actually lay out the pictures on a layout, tape them together, and the editor would mark it up and approve it or disapprove it. And so that's kind of what my background a little bit. And I think with digital cameras, we miss some of that nostalgic or some of that history of how photos are made, and because we just take a photo and we can delete them if we don't like it. We can apply some lightness to it if we don't like it. Back when I used to do darkroom, to put more lightness into a photo, you would just let it soak in the solution with light a few seconds longer, and it would lighten it up. Today we can use software like we're going to talk about tonight, called Picasa, that you can use and does it for you. Not that it's a bad thing. It's just sometimes we miss some of the, I guess, nostalgia or the history or the science of it, I guess it would be, and some of the art that was involved. One of my passions would be to, I never have time to do this, but would be to have like a little, during this class, maybe a few weeks on old school photography with dark room. And we actually have a dark room in the basement. It's not used for that anymore, but years ago it was. That would be awesome. How many think that'd be pretty awesome to do that for a couple? I think that'd be sweet to do that, and bring in some old cameras, some Brownies of 35 millimeters, and show how to do negative exposure, and then jump into digital. I think it'd be so much richer. But anyway, one of these days I'll get that going. Just check the catalog; it'll come out one of these days. I'll get enough weight around here to get done. But anyway, that was my first camera, was the Brownie. And great camera. I still have it in my media room at the house. Grandson lets to play with it and stuff. Haven't taken pictures in it in years, but digital photography is what we all use today. And I told you last week, if you weren't here, that don't go out and buy a new camera for this class. You can use everything from your camera phone to your point and shoot to if you have a high-end camera, that's great. But this class is going to go over the introduction of digital photography, which is all the different settings that you can have in a camera. Some of you will have some of these settings, some of you won't have these settings. But all cameras are different on what type of settings they have and what those settings do. But the main thing I want to focus on the first few weeks and even throughout the semester is getting an eye for photography and a feeling for it. That was that first assignment kind of idea, is getting inspiration about what you look at and why you like photos. Sometimes we just know we like a photo, but we don't know why. Hopefully this semester you'll learn why you like it, and then structure of a photo and layout of a photo before you take it, all those things. You'll learn about terms like rule of thirds, how you lay things out on a camera, viewfinder, how you maybe right now up to this point just put everything in the center and fill it up and take your photo. And we all do that when we first get started. Just like when you first start coloring on a coloring sheet when you're a little kid, you give them crayons, you just start going crazy, right? Before you are taught to draw on the lines or taught to have any structure to it. So structure's not all that bad. I think sometimes it gets a bad rap, but in photography it's good to know the foundational structure for everything that we do, and then you can apply it in your photography from here on out, whether you go in just for novice photography like some of you are, or more professional photography. So anyway, some of these terms you might have heard of, like DSLR, megapixels, image stabilization, dust reduction, live view, sensors, facial recognition. So what does it all mean? Glad you asked. And why do I care? Why does it matter to me? So, three main classifications of cameras. You've got your point and shoot, your prosumer, and your digital SLR. And so, whether you go into Best Buy, whether you go into Target, or a high-end camera shop, like Camera is a good one I recommend here in town. Lundstrom used to be here for years and years and years and years. They've soon, they've gone on and retired, and were there for many, 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 many years. But Camera on Perryville is a great place. If you've never been there, just kind of browse around. The reason I like Camera is when I send students there just to look, they teach them stuff. They show them stuff and say, hey, pick it up, let's look at it. I'll tell you what it's all about. That's great. Because a lot of times you go to a camera store, you're maybe said, found out first, or what are you going to buy? And then if they find out you're not going to buy anything, they're not going to spend much time with you. So these guys are really, really good at helping students and anybody that goes in there. So I do recommend it if you want to just browse in there sometime. As we go throughout the semester, I'll recommend you for certain products to go in there to look at. Point and shoot, what it's all about is basically known as the consumer digital camera. 90% of the folks in the world buy this type of camera, all right? Typically small, compact, lightweight, and your first name might be Ashton if you buy this one. No, just kidding. And so we've all seen the commercials, right, with Ashton Kutcher and taking the photos of the Canon and the different photos he's taken, different commercials. It's targeted at a broad majority audience, very user-friendly, great quality camera for what most people use cameras for. In fact, today, how many has not printed anything you've taken a photo of in the last 2 years? Let's just say 2 years. Pictures that you've taken in the last 2 years, you have not printed a hard copy of those photos. So how many of you, majority of you, put your photos on social media, like Facebook or Twitter, like for family events, things of that nature, or like the Folky website that we use in here? Most consumers do that. They just put it on a digital platform, a website, and then their family and friends download it, share it, like it, whatever. And the days of taking everything to get to print are pretty much gone. Unless you're having a wedding, graduation, or family photos, right? Those three, Everything else is pretty much just put on the web, right, for consumers to look at. So point and shoots are perfect for that. Even your camera phones today, your high-end camera phones, all your Galaxy S's, your iPhone, your whatever Droid phone you have, for the most part, they have fairly good quality to take for web photos, right? And even up to, like I say, a 4:6 type of photo even is fine. Image quality over the years has improved dramatically and drastically in the prosumer area. In fact, a lot of your high-end DSLRs, that we'll talk about in a second, have adapted some of the prosumer stuff that years ago when the high-end cameras came out, they didn't have any of that. They basically just had the LED, the viewfinder, zoom lens, and that's it. That's all we had. Now we have auto zoom. Now we have the different filters that we can apply, different things we can apply in a prosumer as well. So prosumer digital cameras are not technically its own specification. A common term that's used to describe advanced point and shoot basically is, it looks a similar size, similar shape and size, typically has extended zoom. It's typically combined user-friendly point and shoot with more advanced features. The digital SLR stands for single lens reflex. And in this category, you can basically spend, where the money's made in this category for folks who market these products and build these products are on the lenses. The lenses you can, it's $1 million business or $1 billion business, depending on the parts of the world. And so from everything from a macro lens to a micro lens, telephotic lens, telescopic lens, all the different types of lenses that you can buy basically are available within this type of camera that you can't get on the point and shoot cameras. But the one thing that is available here you don't have a lot in the point and shoot is a manual control. But I will say in the last couple of years, some of the manual stuff is now even on the prosumer stuff and the point and shoot. The manual control over things like ISO that you'll learn about this semester, white balance you'll learn about this semester, just to name a couple. And so it's a little larger and heavier than the prosumer and the point and shoot, and has ability to change lenses. And again, some of these lenses can get into thousands of dollars for sure, easy. So what's the real difference between a digital SLR and point and shoot? How many thinks megapixels is the difference? Megapixels is the difference between these, between the high and low end cameras. All right. How many think sensor? The sensor is the big difference. Yeah, sensors basically is going to be the big difference between them. We'll talk though first about the image quality. That's the difference really. We'll talk about sensor in a little bit, but you're right, sensor is it. If you have like a 6 megapixel DSLR, it will generally take a better picture than a 10 megapixel SLR, prosumer camera. And the reason for that is because of the sensor quality. Each digital image is made up of millions of tiny, small squares called pixels, and essentially the image is recorded by what's called these micro lenses, tiny micro lenses, which make up the sensor. So the money in cameras are spent in, the high-end cameras are spent in the sensor technology. The point and shoot, prosumers, even your smartphones, all have sensors, just not the high quality sensors that are in the DSLRs. In fact, a lot of times, like the phones and your point and shoot will have what's called digital sensors. They're digitized sensors, software sensors. So here's an example of a deer. And on the left one has a little red square you'll notice on the ear. On the right is a blown up portion of that. And you can actually see the squares turning into, each one of these squares is a representation of a pixel or a color pigment of that photo placement, wherever you're zooming in on. All pixels are not created equal. A digital sensor is essentially made up, again, of tiny million micro lenses. Pixels are analog devices which record light and color data. Large sensors contain larger pixels, which is much better at collecting data. In fact, if you look at the top there, that most of your compact cameras and digital cameras on your smartphones have the compact camera sensor, which again does the job for what is needed for web-enabled or web quality photos. But the bottom one, you'll notice, has much bigger squares in that sensor, meaning you have a wider spectrum and depth of quality of those colors. So same color spectrum, just wider quality, bigger quality than the smaller one. So here we have an example of sensor compared. So if we have a Canon EOS 10D 300D versus a 35 millimeter, even the digital cameras today, as of even last year, aren't quite up to the quality of true 35 millimeter digital camera when you go to print. And one of the reasons for that is we're digitizing film, we're digitizing light, we're digitizing exposure a lot, even in the high-end cameras. We're getting close. If I was to put a dot here on the highest end camera today, probably like right about here is where we're at right now. And eventually we'll get there with quality. But one of the reasons why there's not been a big rush for it is if you look around the world today, and especially the US, newspapers, magazines, they're all going to digital. Not to say that they still aren't printing them, but they're printing them in lower quantity, all right? Lower quantity. When people get up in the morning, when you get up in the morning, when I get up in the morning, most Americans today read their news on their digital device, whether it be their laptop, their tablet, their phone, and the images in those are digitized images that aren't real huge and don't need to be real high quality. They're news, and so the money is money better well spent on ramping up for businesses their digital platform or ramping up their print platform. That's a discussion going on right now in the digital world and marketing for newspapers, magazines, and everything. But regardless what they are arguing about right now, consumers are consuming more every day the digital, right? It's just the way it is. Whether we like it or hate it, that's the way it is. And so really we don't really even, in my mind, in my estimation, except if you're looking at a National Geographic magazine, Science World, high-end photography for modeling, we're really doing fine with what we have right now. There's no real push to we got to get better quality, when it comes to digital cameras. It's there right now, and we have it right now. Not to say it won't get better and better, but every time you increase the quality, the R&D costs and the quality of the metal or the components of the sensor chip, costs a lot of money to do all that. To make something better and better, it's going to cost more money. And so is a need there to make it better as it was 5 years ago? Probably not so much because of digital. So here we have an example of a larger view. On the one in the middle, the little square in the middle, will be a representation of your digital cameras today, even all the way up to SLR. As far as the scope of what it would take and when it takes a photo, when your camera takes a photo, compared to the outer realm of, like, say, a 35 millimeter camera, film camera. And the only reason for that is the exposure of a film camera back in the day, and even present day, was much larger as far as it would use 100%, almost 100% of that film that you would print out. When I would do darkroom, it would use 100% of that negative as it was going through. Very, very little was not used on the edges of that. And today in the digital world, it's really not needed because whenever people take a photo, they can digitize a zoom today, or if you have a zoom lens, if you do have a high-end camera, you can use your lens to make it larger, make it a larger view. But for the most part, this is what most people are taking a photo of. They have if they have a digital camera, it's going to be more like that center square versus the larger square as far as scope. So let's talk about some definitions here. There is one quiz in this class, and it's in a few weeks from now. Can't remember what week it is. But anyway, you'll have a Word document of quiz, of definitions, basically. You'll have to know. It's going to be out of the class. You'll have to do this quiz. And basically, it's just terminology that you'll need to know, you should know anyway, when it comes to digital photography. So, megapixels. What this is it determines the total size or dimensions of the image recorded by camera. So, somebody tell me real quick if you know, how many megapixels do you have in your camera? Just kind of blurt it out. You don't have to, yeah. 22, there you go. 22. Anybody over here? What is it? 15? 16? All right, anybody else? 24.3? All right, great. Anybody else know off the top of your head? It's not a graded thing, so just, okay. So roughly we have anywhere between 15 and 24 megapixels represented in what we have in here tonight. And that's pretty average for today in 2016. But megapixels, like we talked about earlier at a raise of hands, does not mean better quality. Just because you have more megapixels does not mean better quality of image. The digital image dimension does not equal print dimension. So the more megapixels does not mean you can print a bigger picture and a better quality picture. For example, a full quality image from an 8 megapixel camera will produce a digital image roughly a 9x14 max is about what roughly you can print on a 8. So if you guys are in here, you're looking at 16 and up, today 8x10 roughly would make a very good quality image for you. 8x10, which is mostly what most people high-end, the biggest print you guys print usually is 8x10. The service we're using for the class tonight, Foki, that I'm having you guys use, has a very good price point on above 8x10 because there is one of the sessions we're doing this semester on panoramic that allows you to order a poster size. You can order a poster size printout like I did for one of the ones I did for my son when he was in high school. He used to run cross country, was a poster size image of himself running his last race, right? And I think the saying I put on the bottom was diligence breeds success or something. And I printed out, I had Foki back then, and printed out for like 22 bucks. They shipped it to me in 2 days in a little cylinder. And the price point for everybody else back then was about $35, $40 roughly. And they still pretty much stayed the same competitively with pricing. So not to say you couldn't print higher than 8x10. I'm just saying for most consumers, when you go out to print something for your house, to go on a table or to go on an end table or something, it's usually 8x10. 8x10 frame, not to say you can't get 11x14 frame, 11x17 frame, you can. But you know what I'm saying. Most people want to, the average print sizes is your 4x6 or 6x4 wallet size and your 8x10, right? When you go to order something for school or whatever event. There are odd sizes, though, you can print, and that Foki.com has an awesome selection. Now, I will mention on Foki.com, if some of you, as the semester goes on, I have this happen every semester, students decide to do more of their photography. They want to actually be more proactive, and so they might do you might do a wedding. Somebody in your family figures out you're in this class, and they're like, "Hey, can you do our wedding?" Well, I'm just learning, but yeah, it'd be a great learning thing for me for sure. And it would be, believe me. But you can use the Foki website to set up an album, and then it creates you can create your own URL of your store, and then give that to people, and they can pick and choose what they want. And what's great about Foki is, as a photographer, I can price whatever photos I want. So I can put, say if they're charging $1 for a print, I can put $1.50 or something or whatever. And so you'll get a little profit from it, even though you might not be getting paid. And I wouldn't recommend asking for, if it's family or friend, you're just doing it for experience the first time or first couple times. So I always tell students, offer your services, do your best, and then you can, put your photos on Foki and you're not going to make $1 million, but you can make a little bit. And in the process, you also get to learn digitizing your photos, post-production, uploading, layout and design, marketing a little bit. And so in this class, you'll actually learn a little bit about all of that, not just taking photos. But as you notice in week 1, you're really focusing a lot on, even in week 1, uploading photos, putting photos on sites maybe you've not been to before. Because in this day and age, you have to know how to not only take photos, but major post-production. Every photo that you ever see out there on the news, on magazine racks, they're all touched up. Every one of them have been post-production of some form or fashion, whether it be red eye, whether it be, taking and lightening up a photo, taking a blemish out, and you'll learn all that this semester. So getting back to megapixels, it doesn't necessarily mean a good quality image by having higher megapixels. So here is a megapixel versus print size. And this is just a color chart of how many megapixels you have determines on the print size that you can have. So this would be your megapixels from 2 all the way up to 44, okay? And determining on, actually it's the other way around, from 0 to 18 is your megapixels, and this would be determining on the size you could print out for the megapixels that you have. So in here we start, I think, with 14 or 15, so you're looking at this range here that technically you guys can print out no problem. Are you going to print that size out? No, probably not, but you could, and that would be poster size type of photography. And poster size photography is pretty cool, and I will, when we go over the panoramic lesson this semester, I'll talk more about poster printouts and bring in the example that I printed out over the years so you can look at. And while we're talking about layout and design, before you guys leave tonight, I mentioned this last week in week 1, there are some portfolios up here at the front that I would like you to look at before you leave tonight. Because this is what, if you were not here last week, everybody will be creating a portfolio that'll include a 1-page resume, 8 to 10 photos that you've printed out, also a digital DVD with music in the background, and you're going to be working on these the last 3 to 4 weeks of class and presenting them the last week in class in lieu of your final. So if you would look at these before you leave, that'd be great. And it's a good experience as far as learning photography. A lot of my students have taken those over the years and went to like Register Star and got an internship with those. So let's talk about another definition, movement compensation. You ever taken a photo of somebody that would not stop moving? You ever done that? Maybe you're that person that will not stop moving. Yeah, they just cannot do it, right? Not going to happen. Or much as you bribe them, they just cannot sit still. So it refers to the camera's ability to correct small movements, hand movement, face movement, eyes blinking, whatever, in order to reduce a blur. Because if a person moves while you're taking a photo without this compensation in the camera, you're going to get a blur happen. Sometimes you want a blur in some photos, like the photo of my son running across country. I wanted some blur happening just to see movement. So it's good to have blur sometimes, but sometimes you don't want blur. And so movement compensation is great. Very useful in low light settings and also in telephoto settings. The week that we do the lighting lab, and I think it's in week 10 or 11, we go over movement compensation in 9 and 10, and then lighting, I think, in 11. So basically, here are some terms that each one of these companies have created for movement compensation. The first one is Nikon. they came out with one, vibration reduction, movement compensation. VR is a term they use for that one. Canon IS, image stabilization. Pentax, SR, shake reduction. And Sony SSS, super steady shot. So these are all marketing terms, all the same technology, but thinking of a word that maybe does a one-up on the other company, but they all do the same, just different terminologies. So dust reduction, this is only pertaining to, by the way, dust reduction is only pertaining to DSLR cameras. How many in here has a high-end or a higher-end DSLR camera? You think you do? We're going to go over it more in a little bit. Okay, cool. Any camera that you have that you can remove a lens is going to be a DSLR for the most part. And we'll talk, there's other cameras that don't fit into that, but for the most part. So dust is more of a problem on DSLRs, the single lens reflex, due to changing lenses. So anytime you change anything in any mechanical object, you're going to have dust in whatever it is that you're moving parts. You could have dust. So once the dust gets in the sensor, it's real difficult to remove. So dust reduction is essentially a mechanism inside the camera that shakes it, a micro shake, shakes that lens from getting that dust off of it. And basically the sensor is going to shake off. And it has a special anti-static coating that is used on the sensor to be anti-dust, basically, to where it does not attract dust. Kind of like your cases on your computers, whether it be laptop or desktop. When you go home tonight, even these Macs have it. If you feel the back of your Mac, it's got a kind of it is smooth, but also has a little rough texture to it. And the roughness is basically to get rid of that static energy that's in everybody's hands. Some of us have more electric in our hands than others, just naturally. Anybody in here like that, where you touch something or you touch somebody already shocking them all the time? Well, this in the filter basically filters out the coatings filter out, and also the mechanism to shake the dust will also do the same. Now, live view, you've all probably used this on your cameras, is the ability to use the LCD screen on the camera the same way you use a viewfinder. The problem with live view is it sucks the battery life of your camera, right? So I would recommend starting now not using your live view. You can actually go in there and figure out in your manual, and I'll give a little plug right now for your manual, which you probably never looked at. If you're like me when I first started doing digital photography, I found your manual. Is get that manual right, whether it be online, which more than likely you don't have it anymore, you've lost it or you didn't get one when you bought it. But they usually have a representation of your manual online somewhere. And that goes for both the high-end DSLR, point and shoot, and even those using your phone cameras. All of you will have a manual to look at somewhere. Look in that manual for a way to turn off the preview of your viewfinder, basically. You don't want a live view of it because it's going to suck battery life. So shots can be composed even when holding the camera away from your face. We've all done that, especially in today's day and age. What's it called? Huh? What is it? With the stick? The selfie stick, right? I think we got rid of some selfie sticks in December, right? We did some selfie sticks. Anybody have a selfie stick, by the way? Okay, one person. Yeah, you got it. I think more people have a selfie stick. They're just not raising their hand, probably. Exactly, right. I don't know. I mean, we've all heard horror stories, right, of the selfie sticks. People using selfie sticks in the water, on their motorcycle. Probably not a good idea. Yeah. You're right. Yeah, you're right. Yeah. If you're doing a lot of focusing on a camera, a windy day, a dusty day, that dust can get in there for sure. You're right. Good one. Now, originally on the point and shoots, this feature was the only one available on point and shoot, which was a live view. But since then, like I said, over the iteration of time, DSLRs have begun to inherit, or I'll use the word inherit, probably a better word for it, but inherit the features of a point and shoot over time. And probably just so people would buy them, I'm guessing. All right? They probably didn't want to do it, but hey, if we wanted to sell these things, we're going to have to put something in here that the point and shoots have so people will buy it, right? So, facial recognition. How many has a camera that has, or you've used some type of facial recognition on any device? I don't care what it is. Okay. It's pretty cool, right? It is. The technology is pretty cool. Is it like perfect though? No. It's not perfect. Because you're talking about software, number one, which I teach software development here. I've been in software developing for over 20 years. And I think the fail rate on facial recognition is something like 50, 60% roughly around there. It's probably higher in some areas. Because guess what? We get beards. Guys get beards, get mustaches. When you get sick, your face swells up. Red eye, your hair gets longer, whatever. Our facial structures don't change as far as our bones, and that's what the facial recognition software uses. But our face does. Okay, our face can change over time, and it does. And so facial recognition is not like, perfect. That's why you don't use facial recognition for the most part for authentication. What do we use for authentication when it comes to technology today? Anybody know? Besides passwords, what do we use that's in your physical body? What can you use for authentication? Yeah, your fingers, right? What else have you heard of? Voice is one, right? What else? Retina. Yep. Anything else? Anybody watch the latest Mission Impossible movie? The latest one. Yeah, the latest one. I don't remember the name of it, but anyway, it's the latest one that just came out. They have a section in the movie, right, where they're doing authentication with a hand print, right? We've heard of that, right? The hand print. Then they have one, after they do the hand print, they do gait recognition. So basically what it is as you're walking, everybody has a certain gait that they have when they walk. And they use that gait to determine authentication. And so in the movie, what they had to do was, before Tom Cruise walked across the gait recognition, they just swap out the chip that was in there to recognize the original guy with Tom Cruise. And so, but all of us have certain traits that are unique to us, fingerprints being one. But facial recognition is something that really what cameras have used facial recognition more than anything today isn't to recognize a face, but to recognize that it is a face. Not your face or my face, but just a face, right? So if you have a crowd of people, or if you're in a background in the city and you've got a building here, a building there, you've got a taxi, you've got kids running, whatever, and you want to take a picture of a group of people, their faces that are standing in front of it, the software and cameras today do a pretty good job of recognizing with little boxes around those faces, right? You've probably seen that in your cameras, or you've seen that in other devices you've used. And what it's looking for is skin tone. Skin tone, regardless of the color, it's looking for just basically the skin tone and capturing that skin tone. So here's why most of you are taking a class. In fact, we did the poll last week, the survey. Most of you said one of the reasons you want to take the course is to get a better picture, right? We all want to get a better photo. We want to get a better shot of what we take. And so while there's hundreds of different factors and probably thousands of what makes a good photo, it's a very relative term. Taking a good photo, very relative. What's good for one person might not be good for another as far as what's a good photo. For our purposes, we'll refer to good photo this semester as a photo with correct exposure. All right? Because lighting makes or breaks a photo. Good lighting or bad lighting, really. Because you can have the best camera in the world and the worst lighting in the world, and your photo's not going to get any better, right? So lighting today is huge. And one of the big factors in bad lighting today, believe it or not, is the regulation of getting rid of the old school lights and replacing them with what type of lights? What do we use now in our houses and everywhere? Yeah, well, we had, I think, before LED was what? Before the LED? The, what is it? Halogen. Yeah, fluorescence. And we found out the fluorescents, the compact fluorescents, were really dangerous when they broke, right? You have almost like a hazmat suit to pick it up. So now what's big is the LED lights. The LED lights are actually pretty good lighting, believe it or not. I've taken the last couple photo shoots with LED lights, and they're really good lighting, good exposure. But the fluorescents, these are fluorescents in here, they're terrible for light, for any photo. You don't see it right now. We'll talk about it this semester, but every light gets off a different hue. These lights give off like a bluish hue or a greenish hue, depending on the fluorescent you have. But LED lights are actually really white light. It's a good light. It's a very good light. But a little bit more expensive. But most of the house lights now are being replaced, though, from the fluorescents to the LED lights. But lighting is helping with correct exposure. Also, correct exposure, we'll talk about this semester, deals with your exposure of your camera to the light. And there's different factors there. You'll learn this semester about aperture. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about the actual time of the photo lens opening and closing, what that's all about, how you control that. So, good or correct exposure occurs when you maintain as much detail as possible in the very bright parts as well as the very dark parts. How many's taken a photo outside about this time of night and you've used your flash, and the person you're taking a photo of is like, almost looks like somebody just came out of a vampire movie. They're just totally white, right? It's like just flush white, right? Everything else is black behind them. That's what we're talking about, the photo. We've all taken photos like that, by the way. But a good photo is taking a photo and having the true light of whatever the light is around that object at the time. The truest light you can get, actually. And you will learn this semester a trick in the trade called white balance, and using a white sheet of paper to get proper white balance. Because without proper white, you can't have proper color of any type. Does that make sense? Without proper white in the background, without knowing in the photo what's proper white, you say, well, what if white's not in there? That's where the white card comes in. Or they actually call it the gray card, but it's actually a white card. Determining what the best white is determines the colorization. But to find the very bright parts, the highlights, to find the very dark parts, the shadows, and that range. How many's used Photoshop in here, or a program like Photoshop maybe? Okay. In here we'll be using, by the way, a program online called Pixlr.com, Pixlr.com. Anybody use that before? Pixlr.com? Okay. It's a really good program. It's much like Photoshop, but it's online. It's on the web. But basically, in Photoshop, there is filters in there that you can go in and adjust the highlights of a photo or the shadows of a photo. And that's what we want to try to do when we take a photo, is to get the best highlights and the best shadows we can before we go in to have to do post-production. So 3 factors help with exposure and influence it. Shutter speed, which you'll learn how to do this semester. You'll learn what shutter speed's about. Aperture and ISO. So let's talk about shutter speed. Shutter speed determines how long a shutter's open to the light. Okay, bad light or good light. How long it sees the picture. I really like to call it how long it sees the light. Really, picture really is irrelevant. It's the light around the picture that's relevant. So it's measured in seconds, from 30 seconds down to 1/8,000th of a second in speed. Shutter speed, for fast shutter speeds like the one on the right, would be like a still photo, stop motion. The kids are jumping in the air. You want no blur, you want just stop. In sports we do that, in football, we do that in baseball, we do it in every sport you can think of. We do stop motion to determine a play, maybe right at the goal line. Was the football actually on the line? They can do that with stop motion. So fast shutter speed, 600 up, are used for stop motion. Will freeze the subject. Right? That's pretty cool, right, to do that? How many's tried this, by the way, on your camera? It's the fast motion. Jump in the air, get some type of pose going. Now, how about this? We have slower shutter speeds, This brings motion into any type of photo you're taking a photo of. 1/60th or slower can use to portray movement or speed. Like on the left one, just by looking at the photo, it actually feels like the water's moving. Well, we know it's moving, but by slowing down the frame rate of the shutter, it actually feels like it when you look at it. Same thing with these guys running. If it was stop motion, all their legs would be still, no blur whatsoever. But with blur in the scene, it adds motion feeling to that photo. If you ever go, I had a student last semester do this on I-90 on one of the bridges, go over and do a time lapse of 10 seconds, time lapse on one of the overpasses. I think they actually did it on the Belvedere overpass to the side. And what it does is this type of thing right here. It takes all the headlights of a cars and puts it into one stream of light. Anybody seen the windmills? I think it's on 3951 going towards 55. There was a photographer a couple semesters ago that came in here, Nels Ackerman. You might have heard of him. He's a local photographer here in town. He brought in some of his photos, and one of them was the windmills there, and it was on an 8-hour time delay, time lapse. You just let it go for 8 hours, and it literally looked like a big rainbow popsicle, basically, one of those big rainbow popsicles with the circles in it. After 8 hours of time delay, it was pretty cool. But time delay is something. Shutter speed is going to determine the quality of your photo, the exposure of your photo. And it can be a dramatic exposure, it can be an undramatic exposure, depending on it. Beware though, as your shutter speed decreases, your chance of getting blurry images increases. So here's where the tripod comes in. If you're using slower shutter speeds, you want to get a tripod. Now I'm not saying go out and buy one tonight because you don't need one until like when we do our lighting assignment in week 11, 10 or 11. And really, you can borrow mine if you need to. I guess the message I'm giving you, I don't want you to buy anything this semester, really. I don't want you to spend your money on anything because the terms and technology and the techniques that you're going to learn, you can learn with anything you've got already. And I've got all the parts and pieces you can use to help you. Now, if you find a good deal, though, if you guys ever find a good deal on tripods, whichever once in a while you'll come across, tell us about it. Tell me about it. I'll post it on the website, let everybody know about it. But you will need a tripod if you're wanting your shutter speeds to decrease because it can cause blur. Aperture is the next term. Aperture is basically defined by the hole or opening through which the light's emitted in the camera. Inside the camera lens, there is a system of blades which open and close to increase the opening by which the light passes through. And so the larger the hole, the smaller the aperture. The smaller the hole, the larger the aperture. So it's reverse logic when you think of a number, and we'll talk more about that. So, for instance, aperture is referred to on your cameras as f-stops. Okay? Aperture could be an f-stop 1.8, f-stop 5.6. A 5.6 will be a smaller hole than a 1.8. A smaller number means a wider opening is referred to as a larger value. A large aperture of 2.0, a small aperture is 22. The wider the lens is open, the larger aperture, the more light will get in, and you then need to use a faster shutter speed. So here's an example of f-stops on a camera. Okay, it could be on a camera. You have f-stop 2, 4, 8, 16. You'll notice as the numbers increase, the hole decreases. All right? As the numbers decrease, the hole increases. And so just remember that when we'll get to a whole week of doing f-stops, by the way. So depth of field. This is basically when you're taking a photo and you want part of the photo to be in focus and part of the photo to be blurred, right? And we've all seen photos like that, whether in high school or whether you've been in shopping and you've seen somebody highlight a product and the product is really clear and crisp in the image, and everything behind it is blurred. All right? And we use depth of field to do that. It determines how the image is focused in. A wide aperture or a small number will give you a shallow depth of field and can be used by the subject to isolate the subject, to give a blur. So here's an example. We have 3 balls of twine. On the left is a shallow depth of field, and you'll notice past the first ball of twine, they're blurred, right? We're just focusing in on the first one only. And it uses an f-stop of 2.8. The right one, f-stop 32, which is at a larger opening or smaller opening? 32. Is 32 a larger opening or smaller opening than f2.8? 2.8. How many says smaller? It's smaller. If you say smaller, it's what? So remember, larger number, smaller opening, smaller number, larger opening. But does this have any depth to it? No, it's shallow. It's a very shallow or very wide depth of field because there's no depth to it whatsoever. The next one we'll go over this semester is ISO. It refers to light sensitivity of your sensor. Depending on your sensor quality, depends upon the quality of your ISO. And some of your cameras, you might have seen this already in your settings. You've been playing with it. Anybody seen on your camera, you remember seeing anyway, high ISO, low ISO on your camera? Pretty common. What it means is on high ISO is that the sensor will be more sensitive to light, meaning it takes less light to get the right exposure. And it's similar here on ISO to film speeds in 35 millimeter. ISO typically ranges from 100 to 1600, but some of your cameras might go up to like 64,000, depending on your camera. All right? Use high ISO could cause and will cause what's called, I like to call it kind of granularization of your image. It kind of adds like a texture to your image, basically. Anybody seen like, I'm trying to think, you might have these at your house, like glass things in your kitchen you can set hot things on. They're kind of like, they have a rough feeling to it. That's basically, yeah, like a hot plate. Thank you. That's what high ISO will do to a photo. It'll add like a texture to the image and make it very sharp and add noise to it. So noise is similar to film grain and causes a loss of fine detail. It's more visible in dark parts of an image and generally more noticeable when displayed in screen than in print. And that leads me to ask this question. How many guys have ever seen on your photo, on your computer or on your phone, you've looked at it and you're like, wow, that's an awesome photo, and you go to print it out and it looks terrible? You ever had that happen? Where you've looked at a photo, maybe you've touched it up a little bit, and you're looking at it on your computer or you're looking on your phone, you're like, man, this is the best picture I've ever taken. And then when you go print it out, you're like, that stinks. That's the worst picture I've ever seen. So you can have photos that look awesome on your phone or look awesome on your desktop or laptop that look terrible in print. And one of the reasons for that is ISO or your screen sometimes does not show all of the, I guess, granularization of your image that can show and will show when you print it out. So ISO, continuing on, some cameras claim to have what's called digital image stabilization. All it means is a camera will automatically increase or decrease ISO as needed. So, for instance, in order to allow faster shutter speed, it will reduce the likelihood of camera shake, but high ISO will also give you a grainy image as well if you use high ISO. So fourth element, and we'll be covering this as well this semester for a whole week, is white balance. It doesn't really affect your exposure, it does affect the colors in your exposure. So it makes blue, blue, red, red, brown, brown, if you have the correct white balance. But there is times where you want to fake out the white balance or you want white balance to be artistic. And so if you don't have a good tan and you want to look like you have a good tan, you can use the improper white balance to make yourself look like you have a good tan outside. And we'll show you how to do that this semester. Now, different light sources cast their own colors, which cannot be seen by the eye, the naked eye. White balance is essential to the camera compensating for color, and it casts a light in order to reproduce that correct color. So you've got white balance for things like this room. You have white balance for fluorescent lights. You got white balance for LED lights. You have white balance for halogen lights. You have white balance for darkness, white balance for light, snow, fireworks. You guys have seen them, right, on your cameras? The different types of white balance. And if you haven't seen them, you will, because we'll go over all the different white balances your camera has this semester. White balance for most digital cameras, you guys have used up to this point, I'm guessing, mostly just automatic white balance, okay? But you can specifically have an option for different light sources, like I mentioned. So if you'll get your camera out real quick, I want you to kind of look at, as we were going over some of these last few slides, some of the settings your camera might have, regardless of what the camera is. I want you to go and open it up if you're having a camera phone, or if you have a DSLR, if you have a point and shoot, just pull it out real quick, and we're going to look at some of the settings your camera might have as it pertains to exposure modes. There's several different exposure modes that your camera could have, okay? So, an example is the letter A on your camera. How many sees the letter A on your camera dial or somewhere on your camera? You see a letter A. A few of you should have that. Or you might see a green square, possibly. All right? But auto, or the green square, is fully functional. It's what we're going to use tonight before you leave. It's a true point and shoot camera setting, and we'll use it tonight even in those of you who have DSLRs. But you'll notice on this dial, on this screen, you have different modes that you can select. And we'll go over all those this semester as far as what all these modes are. Some of your cameras will not have all these modes, and that's fine, but you're going to learn what all these modes are and what they do. So let's look at some basic camera settings on your dial. You can look at these while we talk about them. The AV mode, you might see that on your camera. It's the aperture priority, allows you to choose the aperture value, and what the camera will do, will choose a shutter speed for you automatically. You choose the aperture value, it chooses a shutter speed for you. The TV value or shutter priority allows you to choose a shutter speed, and then the camera chooses the aperture for you automatically. The M mode or manual mode gives you complete control over shutter speed and aperture. All right? But not ISO. But it does give you shutter speed and aperture. Some of your newer cameras actually give you shutter speed also and ISO as well. Scene modes. This is where you have full control, automatic control over scenes like, for instance, fireworks would be a scene. Sunlight would be a scene. Snow would be a scene. Landscape would be a scene. Every camera is going to be different, by the way, on the different scenes that are available to you. Scene modes. Another one would be backlit. Eliminates dark shadows. When light is coming from behind, like I talked about earlier, when you take a picture of somebody and they're whitewashed and everything back is black, you could use backlit for that one. The built-in flash automatically fires what's called a fill-in to all the shadows to help you get everything in the shot instead of just a person. Beach and snow is just that. When you're photographing somebody or something in a beach or snow setting, you can set it to that. And it sets a proper white balance and exposure to prevent the scene from being whitewashed and looking terrible. Use a tripod for this one because you're going to be having a longer exposure. Fireworks, shutter speed and exposure for shooting fireworks, pre-focusing and using tripod on this one as well. Landscape, wide scenes, camera focuses on longer distances. Macro mode will actually focus, by the way, on most of these a whole week of the class. On macro mode, I know we have a week of focus, and landscape we have a week of focus, not fireworks. This macro mode is taking close-up. This is a really fun one. Where you go outside, you get a photo of a plant up close or an insect up close. And we'll look at some photos that, if you didn't know it, you would think the insect is like some monster or something. It's just literally not the size of your pinky. But a macro photography allows you to do that, is to really highlight a photo and move in closer. Night portrait, take at night, again using tripod. It helps with a built-in flash and red eye reduction. Night scene, for night scene, pre-programmed for shutter speeds, and also definitely use tripod on that as well. And then lastly, party scenes, taking photos in dim room like this or even worse, and exposure and shutter speed are automatically adjusted. And portrait. Portrait is just what it sounds like. You're taking a portrait of somebody or a group of people, and you want the best shots outside during the day. In fact, I'll just tell you the best time to take photos, and we'll talk more about this as we get to the white balance, is early morning. Any early morning people in here? One person, two people. Any late night people in here? Okay, everybody else is late night. Okay, early morning is the best time, or right before the sunset is the best time, lighting-wise, outside to take photos, as far as good, perfect light to take photos. Sports is another setting you might have. You want action shots, still shots like we looked at earlier, freeze frame. And then beautiful sunsets, you could choose a sunset mode to keep the beautiful hues that are in the scene. And then some of your cameras, and we'll actually focus a week on this, called metering modes, where basically you can focus on one part of a scene setting to focus in on, and then everything else is blurred out. You're just focusing in on one part of that scene or one part of that photo. And there's single metering mode, multi-metering mode. I'm going to skip all those because we'll go over that more in detail later. Okay, so let me get to this one. This is a fun one. We'll end. We're almost done. So, creation and nature, if you look at it, animals, humans, plants, have what's called a rule of thirds that go by, and it's in the photography as well. We'll use that this semester. Imagine basically the frame in your camera being subdivided by 3 equal sections, horizontally and vertically. And some of your cameras, by the way, already have this in there. It basically looks like this right here. Just a grid like this. That's it. You might have already seen it, possibly. Anybody seen this in your camera? The grid? Okay. The grid is actually called the rule of thirds. And the rule of thirds is basically placing your subject in the elements upon one of the 4 quadrants of the rule of thirds. So that means here, 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 or here is where you want to start placing your photos as far as the primary subject or focus in on that subject. And so it makes the photo more naturally attractive and also more attractive to the viewer. So when you first start taking photos, though, where do you want to put the photos at? Somebody tell me. When you first start taking photos, like right, left, bottom, right, or center? Right in the center, right? So this is what we want to do normally. We want to fill the whole thing up. We don't want to do that. We want to focus in on one of the 4 quadrants, and that's called the rule of thirds. We'll talk more about that this semester. That's what it looks like. Those 4 red crosses there is what you want to focus in on for a rule of thirds. And these last photos we're going to look at helps us, apply the rule of thirds, basically. So here we have, what is the object you see as a main focal point of this photo? When I say focal point, this is what the photographer wanted you to see. What do you think he or she wanted you to see in this photo? The sky? How many thinks the sky? How many thinks the tree? How many thinks the water? Well, guess what? You could all 3 be right, right? More than likely, though, just because of the placement of the photo, of where things are at, the sky has pretty good prominence in this photo. But guess what? How many saw the dark tree on the island before you saw the sky? Anybody see the dark tree on the island? If you did, raise your hand. If you didn't, that's fine. How many saw the water first? But this is how it works, the rule of thirds and placement works. If you saw the dark tree first, if you saw this first, your eye came to this first, it naturally starts going here to look at everything else. But let's say you saw the sky first and didn't even notice this. You saw the sky first, and secondarily, your eyes floated towards the dark tree, right, to see that. So when you're taking photos, you need to start thinking also of not only rule of thirds, where you're going to place things, and we'll talk more about that this semester, but also you want to focus on what are people going to see first. They might see something different than you first, but the majority of people, if you really take your time to take that photo and to frame it right, they're going to see what you see first, all right, and highlight first. And we'll talk more about that as the semester goes on. All right, here's another one, rule of thirds. Where is let's talk about the quadrants on these next few slides. The 4 quadrants, upper left, upper right, lower left, lower right. What quadrant is the object in the photo on the left using? Upper left, upper right, lower left, lower right. How many things upper right? How many things upper left? There you go. How about the photo to the right there? Is it using the lower right or upper right? Upper right, right? Leaning towards the upper right. So rule of thirds, it's a concept, it's a model. Is it a science? No. It's just something we use, right? It's just a concept. You place the subject along the lines near the intersecting points. Generally, if it's people you're taking a photo of, you want it up here, right? Up here at the top. You generally don't want it down here. And sometimes if it's a person here, and you want it over on this side, but also always on the top part. For portraits, the eyes need to be positioned on one of the horizontal lines, preferably the one near one of the PowerPoints, or I like to call them the quadrants, is where you want to put the eyes at. It naturally draws people's attention to the eyes. For landscapes, aligning on any one of the horizontal lines. Here's a rule on landscapes. 1/3 water, 2/3 sky, 2/3 water, 1/3 sky. So either one, doesn't matter. 1/3, 2/3. If you're doing 1/3 land, 2/3 sky, 2/3 land, 1/3 sky. Make sense? Now, is it always going to be perfect, straight? No. But that's the rule. And you can bend those rules too, by the way. Post-processing, Picasa. Between now and next week, I want you to install on your Mac or PC, just Google the word Picasa. It's free to download. It helps you manage your photos on your computer, Mac or PC. It does certain effects on your images. It'll let you do like red eye, lightening the photos. But also, too, the great thing about Picasa is you can create your DVD at the end of the semester with Picasa if you want to. You're going to be creating a DVD of your photos. So, anybody using Picasa already? You're using Picasa? Okay. So just Google Picasa. It's a fun app. You'll like it. It's very simple to use. Very simple interface. I've used it for years. So, here's the assignment, the take home. You have your photos with, or your camera with you, hopefully. You don't have your photos with you yet. You might have. Here's the deal. You're going to practice with a group of 3 or 4 people before you leave, so you need to kind of get to know each other with this one, at least get your first names at least. What you're going to do is get 3 or 4 people around you. You can be looking at them now as I'm talking if you want to and go, oh yeah, you're in my group. But I don't want anybody out there by themselves. I want everybody in a group. You're going to set your camera mode to auto mode. Auto mode, which is the square mode on most of your cameras, or it might just say auto. All right. If you have a camera phone, by default it's going to be set to auto mode, all of them, unless you've manually changed it. And also on your cameras, when you press your button halfway down on auto mode, and like most modes, it's going to focus in on that individual. Okay. Make sure and press the button halfway down. Once it's focused in, press it all the way down. And what you're going to do is take 10 photos of each person in your group. So if you have a group of 4, you're going to take 30 photos. Then each person in that group is going to pick out one photo out of those 10, and you're going to delete the other 9. All right? And here's what I suggest to do, so you'll remember the person and the photo, is you can use your camera phone, if you're not already using your camera phone, to take a snapshot of that person's face, text it to yourself with their name on the bottom of that text message. Does that make sense? So if Anita's in my group and I take 10 photos of Anita, she says, I like number 3. I'm going to delete number 1, 2, and 4 and on, and keep that photo. I'm going to take a picture of Anita, text it to myself with Anita in the message, and do that 2 more times in a group of 4. Then what you're going to do when you get home is you're going to label that person's photo. So vanita.jpg, JPG, on my computer. You'll upload it to Picasa, and you'll create an album in Picasa called should be week 2. It says week 1 there, but it should be week 2. So week 2 here, week 1 there. Should be week 2. And you're going to upload your photos into week 2. And what you're going to do is, below here, I say just to type done when you're done, but I want you to also submit the URL of your week 2 in Foki. And so you'll have your username. If you want to create a folder called Web225, you can do that. You don't have to. It's up to you. Because in Foki, you can create folders and you can create albums. All right? If you create a folder called Web225, you can create all the photos for this class, photo albums, inside of that if you want to. That way you can use Foki for other things if you want to. So organization, I'd probably recommend creating a folder in Foki. It's real easy to do. And albums are easy to do too. So you'll upload the 3 photos, if I had a group of 4, of Anita and whoever else is in my group. I'll upload them to week 2. I'll find the URL of that group album, post it here. I'll say done, post it, submit it, done. Make sense? Questions? So where's places to take photos? I'm glad you asked. You guys are real talkative. Let's see. It's nighttime here. So really, out in the foyer is better lighting than in here. So as you leave the computer lab, great lighting. They're having a board meeting, I think, still in that little room there. So I wouldn't go beyond the double doors past the foyer. So I would suggest right out in the hallway here. If you want to go upstairs in the WTC building, there's good lighting in the hallway there in the center by the glass case. If you want to brave the cool, freezing wind, which none of you probably do, there's great lighting right outside the door. But I would say most of you in the little foyer here. If you're very quiet, you can go past the double doors once you get out in the foyer. Just don't be loud because Joe, our security police officer, will come out and tell you to be quiet. Okay? So you can use past these double doors here in the foyer. Plus, if you go beyond, just be quiet. Or you can go upstairs, or you can also go downstairs in the basement if you've never been down there and take some photos down there. All right? So take all your photos, though, before you leave tonight. That way you know you're done. Okay? Questions? All right. We'll see everybody next week. And we decided on Monday night on the chat message, right? Is that right? Is everybody good with that? Monday night? Okay, cool. Periscope. Forgot. Periscope Monday night. And it is recorded.